I've come to Charing Cross Underground Station in central London, used an entrance that isn't normally used and took a turning that isn't normally used, but just yards away from me are hundreds, thousands of passengers going about their normal journeys through London. But this is a part of the station that is disused, occasionally used as a film set, and it's been taken over by the British Army over recent weeks because they are training to fight against Russia. They're training to deploy a headquarters to a safe location, safe from missile and drone bombardments. And as we go down this stairwell to some 26 meters below ground, even the advertisements on the side of the escalators have been modified to try and give those soldiers the sense of the conflict that may be coming. So amidst the advertisements, there are front pages of fictional newspapers. That's the Saxon up there, which appears to do poor imitations of some headlines. And just to put it in perspective, that's the part of the tube where the exercise is taking place, and through these doors and we're back into normal, everyday London. Behind me are some of the 120 British soldiers who have set up a military headquarters down here. They're training for war with Russia. These are soldiers from the Allied Rapid Reaction Corps. That's a British Army headquarters that controls two divisions, commands two divisions, one UK Div and 3 Div, and it's designed to deter and fight against Russian forces. And the exercise they're doing down here is essentially commanding troops who would have deployed to Estonia. In fact, they are simulating being in Estonia. They've brought in about 15 tons of equipment, 2 kilometers of cable, and they've brought it in by a tube train from a depot in Ruislip. Being underground is part of preparing or in training to survive in a conflict. What we've seen in Ukraine is that targets on the surface can be obliterated by long-range missiles, one-way attack drones. Being underground is safer, but that presents its own problems. They're lucky here. They've been able to plug in to transport for London's internet. But even then, we've had communication problems. At one point during our briefing, we were supposed to be talking to a commander in Estonia, and that briefing couldn't happen. The key messages that these soldiers have been giving us is that they're taking the steps towards digitization, and if they want to be able to fight and win, they need to be able to connect themselves to their soldiers need to be connected to their drones, to their satellites, to the fighter jets, all of them able to communicate, to understand what's happening, to respond what's happening. This headquarters, they said, is digitized, but that hasn't trickled down. They estimate that they are piping in here some 10 terabytes of information. That is the equivalent of 3 weeks worth of Netflix, one of the soldiers told us, watched in a single day. I've got to say, one thing that really strikes me down here underground are the echoes of what's happening in Ukraine, of course, and indeed the echoes of World War II, because during World War II, it was tube stations just like these that were used as civilian bomb shelters, but they were also used as military headquarters. And in Ukraine, of course, in the big cities, in Kyiv, in Kharkiv, we've seen hundreds of civilians forced to take shelter from the almost nightly Russian rocket and missile bombardments. And that's why places like this, pre-existing shelters deep underground, will inevitably be used to defend or to offer some protection against the sorts of threats that people would expect to see in a full-scale invasion.